The short trade that we spoke about over the past week and a half has now indeed closed, but as the title of this video is, the big test is here, and that is going to be the big focus of this video. Of course, I should also let you know that we still have a nice sale going on with the code BDAY in all capitals for all of the programs and services on the Teachable store, which you can find a link to in the description below. And even the Krown Quant automation here is actually 80% off for the first month, and that's the service that we're using to set up strategies like this, or really any strategy that you can kind of think of with your imagination, which is probably limitless in this case. And you can try it out for the first month for a very, 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 very low price. Anyways, now that this trade has closed, the real question is, what next? As Bitcoin has opened up this new week or this new month on a bounce. And in yesterday's video, we spoke about how that was likely for a reconnect somewhere around that weekly red 5 exponential moving average right here, which has essentially reconnected or tested it pretty much to the T here with that move to about 59,850. So here's the thing. If you are bearish and you are looking for Bitcoin to come down, this would likely be the push off point, especially coming off of, last week's massive, massive selling dildo right there. And more importantly, because as we've gone over for the statistics in September, the downside is most likely to happen within the first 2 to 3 weeks, actually. In fact, if we look at all prior Septembers, the average September low came within about 15 days into the month. And if you were to actually expand this to about 19 days or 20 days, at least, that would include about, over 90% of these results. So again, that takes us into the quad witching date of September, which has been a major focus on this channel for the past couple of years. And I would really have nothing to, add new to that right here, basically saying that, hey, if you are bearish on Bitcoin, which there, in my opinion, is good reason to believe, then we would be expecting Bitcoin to really push off and continue lower within this first 3-week spread of September, basically until the 20th or 21st at most, and most likely within the first 2 weeks, actually. So that's what I'd be focusing on right here. Of course, that also means that if Bitcoin fails to break to new lows, then that is going to imply Bitcoin likely does pick itself up by its bootstraps and salvage itself last week of September and certainly into October as well, which has actually been a rather nice month for Bitcoin and just markets in general. So that would be the big focus that I'd really be having, and I'm going to continue to remind myself of this data, and also perhaps the viewers out there as well, the people of this community. And actually, this was just a post that I made on Twitter earlier. So, you can reference it there if you so desire as well. Anyways, moving on from there, I do want to get into some of our price statistics, which is our pane right here. Tuesday has been certainly more weighted towards negative closures. In fact, it is actually the worst day of the week for price action if you have a more bullish view. 60% of all Tuesdays since 2024 began have closed negatively, with the highest negative return as well. So not only is it the most likely day, or one of the most likely days to close negatively, it also has the worst negative return at 270. So on the positive side, for those 40% of positive closing Tuesdays, has gained an average about 180. But just like yesterday, where we did see this play out yet again, which I absolutely fucking love, I would be taking today's open, and to the upside, 180 would put Bitcoin, for reference, where actually slightly back above 60,000 bucks, 60,300. So perhaps a boundary if Bitcoin were to continue on with the current rally. I do think that is a lot less likely. And to the downside, shaving off about 270 would put Bitcoin back down around 57,700, somewhere around there. So likely the range for today. I still don't think that we're going to see anything super significant today, but likely a bit of a test to the downside as Bitcoin, does play out more or less a daily range. So moving on from there, I do want to get into our stochastic momentum and just remind myself where the major pivots are at. Over here on CME, we'll go up the list actually, and we can see that the daily time frame is still angled, is still postured to the downside as long as Bitcoin is now below $63,000. I believe that pivot actually moved up from yesterday to today, and now breaking into the bearish control zone here. So I would look at that as a little bit more concerning. 2-day time frame is going to have a chance to freshly cross the downside, but would need to close to, is it today or tomorrow? Tomorrow, actually, sorry. Tomorrow would have to close below 58,900. Bitcoin kind of out there right now, slightly above on CME. And if we go over here to the 3-day time frame, let's see what this one's looking like. Actually also possibly positioning to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below 59,700, which right now it is. Not closing today, not closing tomorrow, but closing on Thursday. That would be 5-day time frame, also going to be heading down as long as Bitcoin's below 64,600. And the weekly time frame, same shit here as well, 62,400 as well. So, that is why I continue to say, if Bitcoin is going to have some downside, I mean, we see all momentum oscillators on the higher term timeframes more or less positioned in the same direction. We have the timing over here for the month. And, well, we also have this reconnect, which, likely would imply that if Bitcoin is going to head down, it likely does happen from, around this level. Maybe there's a move somewhere closer to $60,000. That's personally what I was looking for. Bitcoin maybe to reconnect with the monthly, which is about 60,400. But again, this is kind of like the danger zone, at least in my opinion. So, as long as Bitcoin's down around here, that is a possibility, or at least I would actually say a higher probability. And we'll just see how the next basically 2 to 3 weeks go. And if Bitcoin, really starts to spin its wheels at the bottom side of this range, that would be a really good signal. But it's time spent now. It's just time spent, and it's going to be a waiting game, realistically. Moving on from there, I do want to get into the daily HPDR. We can see on CME that this would be a potential downside continuation setup. We see volatility rising, while the HPDRO representing directional volatility continuing with the downside, as Bitcoin is actually kind of resting right around the 61.8 level. So, again, not getting like a super unique amount from this that we already haven't seen, but if Bitcoin does close today below, let's call it 50, especially like 58,800 or so on CME, I probably would be looking for another move back down to 56.5 or so. Again, that doesn't really break the overall range. But of course, it would be a few $1,000 move, so perhaps relevant to a lot of people out there. Moving on from there, I should also get into the real analysis here, as we are now deep into this video. So all of the true TA believers know what's coming up next, and it is this. This is the real analysis. The moons have happened yet again. And in this case, we're getting a fresh bear moon today, if you want to call it that. Just looking at the last few ones, they have not worked out super well. I mean, it's always hard to argue this because, you see this one right here, the bear moon, if you want to call it that. Yeah, price action did come down for the next day and came significantly further down. This was your August the 5th dump, your bear market of August. But from there, it basically traded right back up to that moon, actually. Overall would have been profitable. However, if you just opened a short right on that moon and closed it on the next moon, of course, you would have given up a lot of profit in between there. But hey, don't need to be perfect. This one over here, hard to argue that this one was good. Obviously, this one, of course, was very, very good. Again, this one over here, some slight downside price action, but ultimately that was a low. This was a high. This was a high. It's hit or miss, of course. And at the end of the day, this one providing the potential downside, would kind of correlate to, hey, if you are bearish, it's more wise to be bearish in the short term here than not. So we have a lot of things kind of working in that direction. Again, it doesn't mean that it's destined to go in that direction. It's just, look, if it's going to happen, it probably happens within this next 2-week spread, maybe 3 weeks at most, up until that quad witching date. And then here's the last thing. So, if you've been following along with these videos, especially for the past week, while we have been seeing a lot of bearish things happen on Bitcoin, I am still kind of skeptical to get full on bearish. Now, if I was just looking at Bitcoin, okay, fair enough. That could definitely work. But when I see traditional markets close in the monthly like this, here's your NASDAQ monthly closure and your SPY monthly closure. It's like, look, they can have a pullback here, but it's higher, it's higher low watch and very likely to make new highs into end of year. So it just makes me very, very, it makes it a little more difficult. It's another added layer of difficulty here just because traditional markets are still, in my opinion, obviously bullish, probably into the end of the year. Whereas Bitcoin, a little bit less so. That would just mean that Bitcoin is weaker. But if these continue up, would we expect Bitcoin to go down? I mean, traditionally speaking, that has just not been the right call more often than not. So that is the one thing that I am struggling with here. Because if I do go down to a week, I mean, it can pull back a little bit. It would still be a higher low. So how do all these moving pieces kind of fit in with each other is the real question. But just something that I'm considering, something that I would add as like a pushback, that maybe Bitcoin, over these next few weeks, it might test some downside, but it doesn't have like a true break to the downside. That is very much possible. But again, this is just the time, in my opinion, to be waiting. I'm not really doing much myself as far as trading goes. Just letting my bot do its shit over here like this. But ultimately, time will tell. Time will tell on this one. So it's kind of a waiting game. And other than that, I think we can probably end this video. It's been a nice little short video here for the true TA nerds. As I can see, I did I even write down the code? Here's the code for here's the sale code, by the way, B-Day in all capitals, again, for all the programs and services here. And then last things last, you know how people always talk about the dollar or fiat currencies, they're valueless. They have no value. There's nothing backing them. There's nothing backing them at all. It's just air. It's just air. It's just by decree. It's by nothing. Well, that is until you look at shit like this. And I was watching this video. I was thinking to myself, yeah, I'm not fucking with that US dollar. Probably too damn low. I mean, look at how that shit is as cool as hell. Yeah, and then you got, I don't know, like 5,000 weeks as well. So that perhaps will do it. And I think we'll end on that note. As always, God, that thing fucking rips. As always, I like to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.